We're from Scotland, which is trying to separate from New English. We hope it doesn't happen. But we now live in Cambridge.
So we don't have a vote.
We don't have a vote for Scotland, so we're confused. There you go. But we've lived in England since 1980. We worked up in Scotland as evangelists for about 8 years, in just south of Glasgow, and we took teams abroad to Italy and France, actually, just helping churches there, and we wanted young people just to get a taste of mission, and so on holiday time we took them out there. We did that for 8 years, particularly in Italy. There were about 7 different cities we went to, and so that's our background. And then God called us down to become a pastor in the south of England, very near Bournemouth, and we were there for 26 years. And it was in 1994, while we were down there, that we got a taste of what was happening in Toronto, and we have never been the same again, I must be honest. We were good, traditional brethren people. Coming to England was good for us because it opened us up to the wider church, because up in Scotland they're very blinkered, you know. And when we came down here, we were opened up to a wider church, and it was really helpful to us. And then we went to what was called Spring Harvest then, and then we actually were invited to a leaders thing in a church called Goldhill Baptist Church, where the minister there is a man called Jim Graham, wonderful teacher. And it was there that we began, that we got a touch of the Holy Spirit, and we were baptized in the Holy Spirit, and God has blessed us. And from then on, we began to search more and more, and God had blessed us in our church. We put a big church, and then all of a sudden we heard about Toronto, and this is where we began to understand what it was all about. And today is about that, because the Father's blessing is important, because a lot of people think that Toronto was all about manifestations and all the various odd things that took place, and a lot of things did take place, which was very interesting and very funny. But Toronto never named it the Toronto blessing. They always named it the Father's blessing. Now people forget that the whole move in Toronto is all about the Father's love, and that was a dimension of the Godhead that was really beginning to actually be explained more and more. And so if you ask John Allen, and I've asked him, about all this, and this is what it was about. That was the essence of what took place. The Holy Spirit came and gave a revelation of the Father's love. If there's one thing that we learn by going there, is that there's a climate of love there that is obvious, and it's infectious, and it actually changed our lives. And maybe share a bit more about that later on, I don't know. But so really, our whole, for the last 20 years, we then moved our church into that. We planted a new church, and when we gave that up about 7 years ago, we've been itinerating around the churches in the UK, Partners and Harvest churches. There are about 55 churches in the UK, and we've been travelling around some churches also in Germany and Finland, and we were over in Oslo as well, where there are churches. And so this is spreading all the time, and so we've got to realise this fact that the whole move of the Holy Spirit has been great, and from a personal point of view, it has changed our lives, we're grateful for that, because it's got to touch the heart. The whole thing about what God is doing out of Toronto is all about the heart, and I went there to check it out, I on my own. At that particular time, our oldest son had been through a major issues, and he was now being ordained as a Church of England minister, which was miraculous. And he was actually in a diocese in London, and he was being prepared to be ordained in St Paul's Cathedral. I was being brought over to this unusual church that was in a little, no, it wasn't much bigger than this, the old building. It was smaller actually than this, in Toronto. And you had to stand in a queue to get in for an hour to get into church. You know, and you know, from all, and we met people from all over the world there, standing in this queue, and I was standing in this queue wondering, you know, why am I here? You know, I've travelled all that way, spent all that money, and what is this all about? And so I asked God that question while I was standing in the queue talking to lovely people. And while I was in the queue, I began to talk to this chap from England too. Very tall man, very well spoken man. He was very, you know, a lovely guy. And we began to chat, and I said, my name's Bob Kilpatrick, and I'm from the south of England now, and he said, my name is so-and-so, and it was a well-known name. I won't mention the name, but a well-known name, and I had never met him before, and I realised that this guy was a bishop in London, standing in the queue, you know. And then it dawned on me that this bishop was the bishop where my son was in, the diocese, you know. And this bishop is responsible for hundreds of ministers in this diocese. And but in typical father, I said to him, "Oh, you know my son Alan, you know." And standing in the queue in Toronto, he says, "Yes, I do know him well. Yes, I do." And in the queue in Toronto, he gave me a rundown of how my son was getting on and being prepared for ministry in the queue in Toronto. I felt God, I felt the Holy Spirit coming, and you've got to realise this, that He will come and speak to you. And I felt Him coming to me, and He says, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to bless your son, and what's happening here is me. You know, so that's going to be all the doubt and all the confusion, and that whole week I was there, the Holy Spirit came and blessed me, and it was one of those moments when God just changes you. And I didn't have a lot of feeling, it wasn't a lot of, you know, that, it was just the sense of God's presence was there in the queue in Toronto. And after that, we were ministered to by many different people who were there. Randy Clark, who was there as a speaker, he spoke, and others. And it was lovely that, and it was lovely then to go to a few months later to go to our son's ordination in St Paul's Cathedral, and he was there. You know, he was dressed casually in Toronto, but he was dressed in all his ministerial garb on the steps of St Paul's, and we had a chat with him there, and you think, isn't God cool? The way that he, you know, there are God, what I call God incidences that happen to all of us, don't they? I'm sure you've all got that experience. When there's just a moment when you go, hey, that was God. And to me, that was the kind of opening the door for us to move into the whole area of the move of the Holy Spirit that has been going on for 20 years. And all I can say is this, that it's still going on today. The impact of that move has multiplied all over the world. And you've got to be encouraged by that you're part of something that is very big. Different groupings of churches have come out of that. People like Bill Johnson in Reading was touched by God in that place. Other folks were there. We've got a particular contact with a lady called Heidi Baker. Maybe you've heard of Heidi Baker, Heidi Rowan Baker. And she was touched by God big time there. The Father's blessing came upon her. She was very ill. She was in that church for a whole week in a wheelchair. And God healed her, God blessed her, and as many of you, as you know now, she's got about 10,000 churches. This is cool. God is good. And we're involved with this ministry, the directors of it here in this country. And so we are convinced about all this, all right? You need to know that. Because it's not just, you know, up here. We see the evidence of this move of God around the world today. And I set that scene for you to realise that what the fire values we're talking about today are based, and the foundation of that is in that kind of situation. So what we're talking about today has had an influence all over the world. Dan Slade, whom maybe some of you have met, Dan Slade is the international director of Partners in Harvest, and he was in Mozambique 2 weeks ago. And he was emailing us, and he was telling us that in all these thousands of churches, and all these little villages, he still signs up Partners in Harvest Church. Partners in Harvest Church, and they've got the same values as we have, even though they're in primitive villages. And so these things are not rocket science, they are very basic truths that the essence of what happened in Toronto, John and Carol Arnott and the whole team there, they are building on, and they're very biblical. And so that's the background. Okay, so
I will say is, I had a new husband, he was away for a week, and he came home, and he was completely different. Completely different. And I thought, well, I'm not going to miss out on this. So I went, after he came home, and he said to me, when you go out there, they'll call out pastors first for ministry, and then they'll call out the wives, and then they'll call out others, and he says, just go with what they're doing. And I said, look, it'll be fine. So I went out, and the first call out for ministry was pastors' wives. I thought, never mind the pastors, it's the wives that need it. So I got so much ministry, but I think, you talk about manifestations, and I saw lots of different manifestations. Some were like, I just cried. I just cried the whole week I was there. But that's a manifestation. Crying counts. But I wanted something. I kept looking at these other people. Oh, I'd love to have that. I'd love to feel. Obviously, the crying empties ourselves out. God knows what our tears are for. Every tear he holds. And he just ministered to me in a way that suited me. And I cried. I left a lot of tears and snot on the floor until I could take you back to that spot. But we've never looked back. So it's been a journey for us since then.
Yes, it has been. It has been, and continues to be so. And we just love. We're a kind of mum and dad to leaders now. That's what we do. We go around churches, and we've been involved in ministry for 40 years now. And so we want to share this and multiply it. So this is what we're doing.
I think how our associate guy went out after we had been out. Because he thought, right, I need to get out as well. So he went out, and when he came back, how he described it was what had been black and white in his Christianity had become colour. Black and white had become colour. Everything began to make sense of who God is, who we are, where everything fits in. Not that we've got all the answers, but it just takes us into another dimension with God, which is exciting. God blessed us before that. I'm not saying all of that is wrong. We saw we saw lots of blessing, but for us, this just became very much, this is where we need to be and want to be.
So enjoy, and be excited about it all. That what's happening today, just don't strive, just rest in Him, and let Him guide and direct you, because He is just a God that loves to. He's a Father. He just loves to actually come in and minister to you and touch your life.